Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of English Mind Space. I'm Nick.
And I'm Emily. Thanks for joining us today. We're diving into a topic that's deeply personal, but often overlooked: the invisible weight of anxiety that comes with learning a new language, especially English.
You know, it's easy to talk about vocabulary, grammar rules, pronunciation, and all the technical stuff. But what about the emotional side? What about that tight feeling in your chest when you're asked to speak? Or the panic that hits when you forget a word in conversation?
Exactly. Language learning anxiety is real, and it's something that affects so many learners, even if they never say it out loud. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or advanced, the fear of making mistakes, being judged, or not being good enough can creep in quietly and stay in the background of every lesson, every conversation, every test.
It's like carrying an invisible backpack full of doubt, fear, and pressure. And unless someone helps you unpack it, it just gets heavier. Some learners start thinking they are not smart enough or that they are failing, when in reality, they are just overwhelmed and exhausted from the pressure.
And the tough part is, a lot of this anxiety doesn't come from inside, it comes from outside expectations. Maybe you've been told you should be fluent by now. Or maybe you feel like everyone else around you is improving faster. It's this constant pressure to perform, and it can seriously hurt your confidence.
That's why today's episode is all about opening up the conversation. We want to normalize this experience. If you've ever felt nervous speaking English, avoided speaking altogether, or judged yourself too harshly, you're not alone, and you're not weak. You're human.
We'll explore where this anxiety comes from, how it affects your progress, and most importantly, how to deal with it in a healthier way. Because you deserve to learn English without carrying unnecessary emotional weight.
So let's get into it, real talk, no filters. Let's begin by identifying the signs of language learning anxiety.
One of the biggest signs of language learning anxiety is avoidance. You might delay practicing speaking, even though you know it's necessary. You might feel your heart race when it's your turn in class, or during a conversation. Or maybe you rehearse what you're going to say 10 times in your head before you even open your mouth, and still feel it's not good enough.
Yes, and for some people, it shows up physically. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, stomach tension. Your body can react as if you're in danger, even though you're just trying to say something in English. That's because your brain is treating the situation like a threat, not a chance to learn.
And the thing is, this doesn't happen because you're bad at English. It happens because your brain is trying to protect you from embarrassment or failure. It's a defense mechanism, but one that's not very helpful when you're trying to grow.
So, what do we do about it? The first step is awareness. Understanding that this anxiety is a natural response, and not a personal flaw, helps remove some of its power. When you realize you're not the only one feeling this way, it already starts to feel lighter.
And after awareness comes compassion. You have to speak kindly to yourself. Learning a language is hard, and doing it under pressure makes it even harder. When you mess up a word or freeze mid-sentence, what do you say to yourself? I'm so stupid. Why can't I speak properly? That inner voice needs to change.
Try saying, it's okay. I'm learning. I'm doing my best. That might sound simple, but your inner critic can be brutal, and if you let it run the show, your progress will feel like punishment instead of growth.
Also, lower the stakes. You don't have to be perfect when you speak. You don't have to sound like a native. You just have to connect. Focus on communication, not performance. Because English is a tool, not a test.
Here's something practical: start with small, safe spaces. Maybe you talk to yourself at home in English. Maybe you write your thoughts in a journal. Or practice with a kind tutor or friend who won't judge your mistakes. Build trust with yourself and with others.
Yes. And if you need to pause during a conversation, breathe and say, sorry, I'm still learning, that's okay. You don't have to rush or pretend. Being honest actually makes conversations more human, and people usually respond with kindness.
Let's also talk about comparison, because that's where a lot of anxiety grows. When you look at others and think, they are better than me, they are more fluent, I'll never be like them, it creates this silent pressure. But what you're really doing is ignoring your own path.
Right? You're not in a race. There's no finish line you have to reach at the same time as someone else. Everyone learns differently. Some people speak faster, others understand grammar faster, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're still going.
And you're growing in ways you might not even see. Maybe your vocabulary is expanding. Maybe your listening is sharper. Maybe your courage to keep trying is getting stronger. All of those count, even if they don't show up in a test score.
Exactly. You're doing better than you think. Anxiety might make you focus only on what's wrong, what you can't say, what you haven't done, but let's take a second to recognize everything you have done. You've started. You've practiced. You've stayed with it.
And that's powerful. Most people give up when it gets hard, but you're here. Still learning, still listening, still growing. And we're proud of you for that.
Coming up next, we'll talk about some calming techniques you can use when the anxiety hits, real tools you can keep in your pocket when English feels overwhelming.
One of the simplest tools is something called box breathing. It's used by athletes, performers, even soldiers, and it's great for language learners too. You inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4 again. Just 1 or 2 rounds can help reset your nervous system and reduce panic.
That's such a great one. And here's another, grounding through your senses. When anxiety starts to rise, bring yourself back to the present moment by naming 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. It sounds simple, but it works.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed before speaking in English, like in a meeting, a class, or even a one-on-one conversation, try this. Instead of thinking, I have to speak perfectly, tell yourself, I'm going to connect with this person. That small shift in mindset can reduce the pressure instantly.
Another tip that's helped me personally is practicing self-compassion out loud. Before starting a study session, or a speaking activity, try saying, it's okay if I mess up. I'm allowed to be a beginner. I'm allowed to take my time. I'm still doing something brave.
That's so powerful. Because often, our inner critic is running in the background, and we don't even realize it's draining our energy. Giving yourself permission to be imperfect actually gives you more freedom to learn.
Also, if you can, celebrate the small wins. Did you understand part of a podcast? Write it down. Did you order food in English without freezing? Celebrate it. Every time you recognize a win, your brain creates a positive memory around English, instead of fear or pressure.
Exactly. That positive reinforcement helps replace anxiety with encouragement. It builds emotional safety around learning, which makes everything easier, remembering words, speaking more freely, enjoying the process.
And let's not forget the power of community. Find even one person you feel safe practicing with. Someone who listens without correcting every second. Someone who sees your effort, not just your errors. Having support makes a huge difference in calming anxiety.
Yes, and remember, that safe person might even be you. You can be your own safe space. Through journaling, reflection, or self-talk, you can build a more gentle relationship with your learning journey.
Because the truth is, you're not failing just because you feel anxious. You're learning something new in a second language, and that's incredibly hard and incredibly brave. You're not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You're strong for showing up anyway.
We'll keep talking about more ways to build emotional strength in your language journey in our upcoming episodes, but for now, just know this, your feelings are valid, and your growth is real, even when anxiety clouds it. You're not alone in this.
Another idea we've seen work for so many learners is building micro-routines. These are short, calming habits you do before you start using English, kind of like a warm-up before a workout. Maybe it's 5 minutes of reading something easy, listening to a calm English voice, or just writing down a few simple affirmations in your notebook. These tiny steps help you enter a learning space with less pressure and more clarity.
That's such a good point. So many people jump straight into high-stress tasks, like speaking on camera, joining live classes, or writing essays, without giving their brain time to adjust. But when you slow down and ease in gently, your anxiety doesn't take the lead.
Yes, and that reminds me of something a learner told me once. She said, "When I rush, I panic. When I breathe, I remember." That really stuck with me. Sometimes anxiety tricks us into thinking we have to rush everything, or that everyone's watching and judging us, but most of the time, they're not. Most people are focused on their own thoughts, their own mistakes.
Right. And people are more patient and understanding than we expect. In fact, when you're open about your process, like saying, "Sorry, I'm still learning," or "Give me a second to find the right word," it makes others more open and relaxed too.
It's funny how our fear often assumes the worst reactions from others, when in reality, many people are curious, kind, and even inspired by someone who's learning a new language.
And another truth is that the more you face your fear little by little, the quieter it gets. Every time you speak, write, or listen, even if your voice shakes, you're sending a message to your brain that says, "This is safe. I can do this."
It's a form of healing, really. Rewiring the anxious response through practice and compassion. That's why it's so important not to avoid English out of fear. Avoidance may feel safe in the moment, but long-term, it builds more anxiety.
Exactly. The antidote to fear isn't perfection, it's progress. And progress is made by showing up, again and again, gently but consistently. Even on the hard days. Especially on the hard days.
So, whether your anxiety is loud or quiet, whether it shows up every day, or just before you speak, know this. There are tools that help, and you are capable of learning in peace. It doesn't have to be a fight.
And something else we often forget is how powerful our inner voice is. If every time you make a mistake you say to yourself, "I'm so bad at this," or "Why can't I speak like everyone else?" your brain starts to believe that narrative. But if you catch that thought and replace it with something like, "I'm learning," or "This is just part of the process," it completely changes your emotional state.
Yes. That's a form of self-talk that can either feed your anxiety or slowly dissolve it. Your brain is listening, not just to English from the outside world, but also to how you speak to yourself. So make sure your inner voice is a kind one. A supportive one.
I love that. And journaling, like we talked about in a previous episode, is such a great way to reshape your self-talk. When you write out your fears, your patterns, your breakthroughs, and even your tiny wins, you begin to see your growth more clearly. It's not just about grammar, it's about emotional awareness too.
Absolutely. Language learning is emotional. And we don't say that enough. It's connected to self-worth, fear of judgment, cultural identity, and so many other things. When we ignore the emotional side and only focus on vocabulary or test scores, we miss the full picture.
Which is why episodes like this matter. Because sometimes, what you need isn't another grammar tip, it's just someone saying, "Hey, what you're feeling is real, and you're not alone." That simple reminder can take such a heavy weight off your shoulders.
And even though it may not feel like it all the time, you're making progress, just by showing up. Just by listening to this conversation, your brain is already working with English, processing, understanding, relating.
That's something to celebrate. You're here. You're still trying. And every word you learn, every fear you face, brings you one step closer to confidence, not just in English, but in yourself.
Exactly, Nick. And one thing learners often don't realize, is how much emotional effort it takes to speak in another language. It's not just about remembering vocabulary or grammar rules, it's about putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, and risking embarrassment or misunderstanding. That's a huge act of courage every single time.
Yeah, and sometimes we expect ourselves to be fluent without making mistakes or feeling anxious, which is impossible. Even native speakers hesitate or mess up, especially under pressure. But for English learners, that pressure can feel 10 times heavier because of the self-judgment that often follows.
And let's be honest, anxiety doesn't always disappear just because you've learned more. Some advanced learners still struggle with confidence because they haven't addressed the emotional side of speaking. That's why calming your mind, building self-compassion, and practicing patience is just as important as practicing conversation.
Right. That's why we encourage things like breathing exercises before you speak, or grounding yourself by focusing on your senses, what you hear, feel, or see, just to bring your mind back to the present moment instead of the future fear.
Yes. And lowering the stakes is also key. Not every conversation is a test. You don't have to prove your intelligence or impress anyone, you just need to connect. Even if your words are simple, even if you pause or correct yourself mid-sentence, the act of expressing yourself is success.
And honestly, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remind yourself, it's okay to be learning. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep going. That mindset is what builds resilience, and that resilience carries you through the tough days.
Exactly, Nick. And if you're listening to this right now and struggling with anxiety while speaking English, please know, you're not alone. What you're feeling is valid, and it doesn't make you weak or less capable. It just makes you human.
That's right. Learning a language is a journey, not a race. And part of that journey is learning how to be kind to yourself, even when it feels hard. Progress isn't just measured in how many words you know, it's also in how bravely you show up, how gently you respond to your own fears, and how consistently you keep trying.
So, take that deep breath, remind yourself that it's okay to feel nervous and speak anyway. Every word you say, even the ones that feel shaky, is a victory over fear. And with time, it does get easier.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If this episode helped you feel a little more understood, we hope you'll carry that comfort with you into your next English conversation. We're proud of you.
Always. Until next time, keep learning gently and speaking bravely. You've got this.